about a little bit of beautiful music to start off? Okay, I am starting this first episode, and I would like to welcome you to CJ's Corner, where you'll learn how to craft story to captivate, engage, and influence your audience. I am having all kinds of technical difficulties this morning. Believe it or not, I just got done doing the entire show and it went nowhere. So this is take two. I guess we can call the other one a practice session. Although I notice my headset is still giving me problems from the first one, but hopefully that won't matter to you too much. Okay, so let's start off by telling you that I am CJ Powers, and there we go. Like I said, technical difficulties. But today, I'm going to go over with you the things that will help you to create stories that captivate, engage, and influence your audience. And I'm going to just dive in right away because I'm so tired of this technical stuff not working. Coach Dave Robinson, the CEO of Helping Leaders Get Unstuck, shared a story with me this last week. And I thought you needed to hear it for two reasons. One, it would be a great way to start off this series about story and how to use it for your benefit. And it will also be really good from the standpoint of helping you to understand the structure I use called GAC2, GAC2. I'll get into that in a moment. But the GAC2 principle will guarantee that you captivate your audience, that you engage them, and that you influence them. So we're going to get started right now. During a Harvard study in the 1950s, Dr. Kurt Richter, he placed rats in a pool, get a load of this, to test how long they could tread water. Okay, on average, they gave up and sank after 15 minutes. Ooh, but the good news is, right before they gave up due to extreme exhaustion, the researchers would pluck them out, dry them off, and let them rest, at least for a few minutes. Then they readied them for a second round. That's right. They decided to put them back in the water again. Now, during the second try, how long do you think they lasted? Good question, right? How long do you think they lasted? Now, some people, I'm going to guess, are going to say something like, oh, well, if it was 15 minutes before, now they're a little bit more tired, maybe 12 or 13 minutes. And others would be like, oh, no, they were able to learn from that issue and extend their strength, and they probably lasted up to 20 minutes. I would love to know how long you think that they lasted. Here's the thing. You're not going to believe what happened. The second time that they put them in the water and started timing them to see how long they could tread water, they swam for 60 hours. 60 hours! The researchers drew the conclusion that since the rats believed they would be rescued again, just like the first time, they were able to push their bodies way past what they previously thought was impossible. Now, a lot of times we find ourselves in situations that are impossible. And do we say, I'm going to give up? Like me with this episode, since I did the entire episode and it went nowhere and I had to start over again and hope that it connected this time. The rats' hope had increased their ability to survive. This is just based on their hope. Their ability to survive was increased by a factor of 16 times that of the average rat. I mean, that's superhero strength. Superhero strength. We can do that too. So the next time you feel like a failure, or you just feel like failure is around the corner, that it's imminent, remember that hope will give you 16 times more endurance to push through than the average human being. Be your own hero and find something in which to place your hope. Okay, now I really wanted to start out with a story so that you could get a feel for the fact that all these episodes are going to be about story and how to build them. Because I want you to learn how to captivate, engage, and influence your audience. Now, to captivate, we have to understand what that means. I'm talking about attracting someone's attention and holding their interest throughout the duration of what you want to get across. That's hard to do. For engaging, I want you to think about the fact that, oh, I just noticed, I'm sorry, I should have noticed your comment earlier. Be your own hero. Yes, indeed. Thank you for commenting. I like that. So to engage, and see, you're already engaged. That's a wonderful thing. And I unfortunately was not prepared for that because I'm so new at this first episode. Okay, so anyway, to engage, we want to get the person at the other end of our story to do something, to take part in something. And then for influence, we want to affect them or at least alter their trajectory indirectly or in some intangible means. So each episode is going to be built on the fact that we want to captivate, engage, and influence the audience. And we're going to do that. We're going to get to several different things that will help that happen. Now, I'm going to teach you the GAC2 principle. This is a principle that I designed. It effectively works. I've used it in film, television, radio, podcasts. I've used it in speaking engagements. I've used it in teaching settings. And a lot of other people have used it too, because I didn't dream it all up. I had learned a lot of stuff from a lot of people. I gathered all that information together. I noticed multiple layers. And in the layering of all these different stories, there was this repetition that happened consistently. That is, with the good stories. The ones that weren't so good, I couldn't find the pattern. But this pattern was in every single story that was good. So let's go over that, and then I'm going to go back to the story about the rats treading water and show you how these elements fit to make that story work. So GAC2. Everything about the GAC2 is, in fact, tell you what, let me pop this up. Goal, action, consequence, or conflict. That's what the GAC2 principle is. And the reason for the two is there's two C's. So it's GAC2. So the goal is that your main character, or whoever it is that you're talking about, which kind of is a main character, has to have a goal. In the case of the story with the rats, the goal was to find out how long the rats could tread water. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The other thing about it is that the goal also was what was designed to captivate the audience. The moment you heard about rats treading water, you kind of have to listen to the rest of the story, don't you? You want to know what it's going to come of that. So by establishing the goal along with the thing that captivates the person's attention, you have pretty much melded them together, and the person has to write out the story to get to the end to know what happened. Okay, then we have the action part. With the action, we're talking about engaging the people. And Sparkle, Rise, Thrive. I love that name that you're using. You connected here. We put your comment up. I'm used to doing things with other people. First time I have a show like this. When it comes to engaging, sometimes we want to engage people verbally. Sometimes we want to engage them through the internet, as we did for a moment here. There's many different ways of engaging people, and we need to figure out how it is that we want to engage. But keep in mind, the key here for the story flow is action. We need to be able to describe some action. Now, let me just take a brief moment to shift over to here for a second. And I'm going to hope that this camera doesn't follow me. Let me see here if it's going to... Okay, good. We're good. Okay, over here, if we start with this being the first tile in the story, this one, and this one, these three tiles represent the beginning of the story. In there has to be the goal. So when you go to express your story, you need a few things to happen. In the original story that I told, I started out saying where I came about finding out about the story. Then I talked about who the story was about, and I got to the point where I established clearly that their goal was to see about how long rats could tread water. That's the beginning. That's Act 1, if you will. That's the starting point. In the beginning, you have setup time, you can structure things, you can let the audience know what the story is about so that they can follow it. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. Next, Act 2, if you will, we get into the action aspect. And for action, we have 4 sections of action. In the beginning, I told you that we're going to get them to tread water. So we put them into the water, and they were struggling. They come in around the 15-minute mark. Some of them started to sink, but just before here, the midpoint of the story, they were rescued by the researcher. And you learn that they were taken care of, they were allowed to rest. You learned all kinds of things as far as, I can relax now, they've been saved. But then I threw in here the fact that we decided to put them in a second time. That's right, we were going to test the rats again. We upped the ante, we created more action again. So there were 2 sets of action, and that's why a lot of times in the second act or the action part, you have 2 parts. You have this, the midpoint, and then these 2. Okay, then we get into the ending. The ending has to resolve. It has to have a consequence. So the consequence is also the point where you influence your audience. Now in this case, from here, we talk about the fact that they were in the water again, struggling to survive, holding on to the hope that was built into them throughout the process. We move to the next section where I turned around and asked, how long do you think they lasted? Then came the reveal. Oh, I'm sorry. I slipped over. The ask was a part of here because it shifted us into this, then the reveal. And then this last section is when I told you the story again, slightly from the standpoint of here's how it impacts you. So at that point, you understood basically that you can be your own hero. And when you think failure is imminent, you then have 16 times more strength than you think you do to pull off what it is that you're trying to do. So that fits the entire story structure. So just as a quick review, we want to captivate, we want to engage, and we want to influence. To do that, we want to establish the goal of the story. We want to have the story take some form of action, and then it has to have conflict or it has to have consequences. Within the consequence, and consequence, by the way, isn't a negative word. It's also a positive word. Sometimes we have very positive consequences that happen. If you walk along the sidewalk and you smile at someone and they smile back, the consequence of you smiling at them is them smiling back. That's a good thing. But in that moment, that's where the influence takes place, because your smile influenced them to smile back. You took your positive demeanor and got them indirectly to act out a positive demeanor in return. That's why the consequence is so critical to your story. So whether you're talking about a story from the standpoint of maybe you're a teacher teaching a classroom of kids, or a salesperson trying to close a deal with clients, maybe you're a coach working with a team, maybe you're a dad or a mom who's trying to influence their children. Whatever it is that you choose, those things, by using a goal, action, and consequence within your story that you're sharing with them, that will help them to remember the story for a long time. Now, last week, I bumped into someone who said, "Hey, aren't you the guy that told the story of such and such?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but that was like 5 years ago." "Oh, yeah. I've told that story to 100 people. And the person went on and on and on. And the reason is because the GAC2 principle was employed during that talk. And what happened was those people received the story, and as part of it, there's a couple things that happen here. When you hear a story and you receive the message, the theme, whatever that key issue is, if your instruction or your influence or your idea is attached to the story, if it's integrated, then you connect with them and they will remember it for a long time. You know, there's been a study done almost every year. They redo the study because it sounds so weird, but it has always been proven true. If I give a talk today, if you're listening to this today, tomorrow you're going to remember 15% of it. By the second day, you'll only remember 15% of what you remembered the day before. So in other words, 3 or 4 days out, you're not going to remember a thing about what I said. But if I tell a story that is perfectly tied to my point, then, absolutely then, you'll hold on to the story, and as a result, hold on to the meaning that I attributed it to. Oh, look at that. I'm getting a couple more comments, and I like this. Whoops, this is Kelly. Hey, Coulter, how you doing? Guys, I'm glad you were able to join on. I'm glad you found it. Something funny happened. I did the entire show for a half hour, finding out that it was not going up on YouTube. So, I'm glad that you found me, because I redid it. Of course, many of you found it after the fact, but that's okay. At least you came here to say hi. So hi there. So and just for those of you who came a little bit late, I'm going to let you know. See this background here, this artistic design. This artistic design is actually, believe it or not, it is a story chart. And I used it today to talk about my GAC2 principle and how you can use story to captivate, engage, and influence an audience. But believe it or not, oh, Janet, that's who you are. Hey, Janet. I should have known by the animal paradise. I'm glad you guys came out and to say hi. There you go. Adding in the LSP is the important part. Let people know you're representing. And by the way, thank you so much. Several of these people here that have just recently joined have been coaching me. Last week, I had put together this talk for about, I don't know, I probably spent 30 hours putting it together. And then I started to talk to them about how I was going to do it and what I was going to do. And they're like, CJ, that sounds awfully complicated. Why don't you just do what you always do? Just tell a story. I was like, oh, you mean I can just talk about the story? So it's been fun to. Oh, hey, Daniel's here too. Oops. Look at that. Oh, look, the whole clan is showing up. And now Kaylee's on her own. And Wynn showed up too. Hey, guys, thank you so much for coming. I I have to say that I appreciate you a lot.